When it comes to sex and relationships, it feels like there's just so much information out there. It can be really confusing.
Oh, absolutely, a whole sea of it.
But you've brought us a really interesting source today, The Kiss Guide to Sex. Looks pretty comprehensive.
It is. And that's our mission for this deep dive, really, to pull out the key insights from this guide.
Kind of a shortcut.
Exactly. Give you the core ideas about sex, intimacy, without getting totally bogged down in, everything.
It really does cover a lot, doesn't it? I was looking through it, falling in love, great lovemaking, even future sex.
It spans the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
And the guide itself, it uses pictures. The style is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it seems quite accessible.
That's the idea. A broad look, but easy to grasp. We're just here to distill it down.
Okay, let's dive in then. Part 1 seems to be about falling in love, those first encounters. And right away, it makes a distinction between love and sex.
It does. It talks about love being, well, complex, funny sometimes, sad, even painful.
And it mentions first love being different from later love. How so?
Well, part of that initial, really intense feeling, that rush, the book links it to neurochemicals like phenylethylamine, PEA.
Ah, the love hormones.
Right. They create that kind of euphoric state. But here's the thing. The book points out that intense phase, it often only lasts, say, 3 to 6 months.
Oh, wow. So that fading intensity is actually
Yeah.
normal, biological.
Pretty common, yeah. It helps to understand the biology behind it sometimes.
Definitely. Okay, so beyond that initial rush, the guide mentions 3 main kinds of love: erotic, ludic, and storgic. Can you unpack those a bit?
Sure. So erotic love, or eros, that's the immediate passionate stuff. Physical desire, intimacy.
Got it.
Ludic love is, well, more playful, less
Right.
about deep commitment, more about fun, the game of love almost.
Okay.
And storgic love grows out of friendship. It's slower, based on companionship, shared values, care.
So different flavors of love, really, not necessarily exclusive categories.
Exactly. You might experience different ones at different times or even blends within one relationship. It's a framework for thinking about dynamics.
That's helpful. Now, the guide also touches on something maybe less familiar to some listeners: sex within arranged marriages.
Right. It acknowledges this isn't just history, it's a reality in many cultures today.
So how does it frame that?
It basically points out that the sequence love first, then sex isn't universal. In some cultural contexts, commitment comes first, and intimacy, maybe even love, develops from there.
And it mentions modern matchmakers, online resources playing a role now, too.
Yeah, tradition evolves. It's a good reminder that fulfilling intimacy can be built on different foundations than just the Western romantic ideal.
Broadens the perspective, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, back to maybe more common scenarios for many listeners. The book suggests friendship is a great foundation for sex. Why?
Well, if you've already got that trust, mutual respect, understanding, it can make navigating the physical side feel safer, more natural, less pressure.
Right.
And it acknowledges, first sexual experiences aren't always perfect. Lack of knowledge, maybe being nervous.
Yeah, that happens.
So that friendship base, the communication that comes with it can really help navigate those early explorations. Patience is key.
Takes the pressure off perfection. Good point. It also talks about knowing what you want from a relationship: companionship, sex, security, whatever, and sending the right signals.
Signals.
Yeah, it suggests thinking about your priorities first. Then, the interesting part is, it hints that we might subconsciously signal those desires,
How?
even through things like, well, how you dress, glasses or no glasses, facial hair, seemingly small things. They might subtly communicate something about you and what you're looking for.
Like nonverbal communication and dating.
Exactly. Our actions and appearance can speak volumes.
Fascinating. And then there are the more direct routes, dating agencies, online dating. What's the advice there?
It's balanced, sees the opportunity, widening the pool, but also urges caution.
Makes sense.
Choose agencies carefully, be smart online, watch out for misrepresentation. Be proactive, but be prudent. Good advice. Okay, so we've met someone, maybe there's a connection.
Yeah.
Let's talk about getting in touch. The physical side. The book stresses taking it slow.
Yeah, building intimacy gradually. It allows the emotional connection to keep pace with the physical.
How does it suggest doing that?
It talks about tempting talk and tempting touch, building anticipation, desire, without jumping straight to sex, creating that exciting progression.
And it highlights simple things like kissing and hugging, even references the Kama Sutra on petting being an art form.
Right. These aren't just minor preliminaries. They're meaningful ways to build closeness. Kissing on the mouth especially is often seen as quite intimate.
A significant step.
Definitely. Then it moves into what it calls boldly going, where no man or woman has gone before.
Okay. Which
And
calls
basically, sensual massage, foreplay, exploring each other's bodies, finding pleasure beyond just intercourse.
expanding the definition of intimacy.
Exactly, making those early physical stages rewarding in themselves. Key takeaways are communication talk and listen touch without rushing, and knowing you can always stop or slow down.
That right to stop feels crucial.
Absolutely. Mutual comfort, mutual pleasure, mutual respect.
That respect and communication theme keeps coming up.
Okay, so things are progressing. The big question. How far should this relationship go? It tackles sex on the first date directly.
It does. And essentially, it says it's a personal call. No right or wrong answer for everyone.
Guided by instinct. Comfort level.
Pretty much. It mentions the chemistry of love, acknowledging that strong initial spark can play a part.
But crucially, it also talks about being able to say no, and notes that women sometimes find that harder.
Yeah, it highlights the societal pressures that can exist. The core message is about boundaries, setting them, respecting them.
And communication helps there too.
Hugely. Open, honest talk is vital for navigating that, making sure everyone feels safe and respected, whatever the decision is.
Makes sense. What about concepts like soulmates? Does the guide buy into that? It touches on it, that romantic idea, but doesn't really push it as, the ultimate goal. More of a concept.
And differences between male and female love.
It mentions the idea that sometimes maybe men fall in love faster, but stresses that the depth, the duration, that varies hugely for everyone, avoids broad generalizations.
Good. And practical tips. How to get it right in a relationship.
Simple things, really. Giving genuine compliments, showing affection, verbally, physically, little gestures that show you value the person.
The small things add up.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dig into love versus sex. How does the guide explore this?
Well, it starts by saying that intense infatuation, being simply mad about you, often does lead to wanting sex. Pretty natural connection.
Right.
But then it also brings up sex with friends, acknowledging that for some, a sexual connection can happen outside of typical romance.
As long as everyone's clear and consents.
Absolutely. Communication and consent are paramount there. It also asks, do you need love for good sex?
And the answer is...
It's nuanced. Many people feel love enhances sex or is necessary, but it also acknowledges that others can separate them and still find sex enjoyable. It references Alfred Adler's idea of life tasks, work, friendship, love, intimacy.
So sex fits into that intimacy task, but maybe overlaps with friendship sometimes.
Kind of. It shows sex relates to fundamental human needs, but the link between love and sex is ultimately personal. Depends on your values, your partner's values. Respecting each other's moral code is key.
It keeps coming back to knowing yourself and communicating. Okay, shifting gears. The erotic human and great lovemaking. It starts by saying humans are naturally erotic from childhood.
Yeah, the idea is that kids naturally enjoy physical sensations. It's socialization, inhibitions we learn that can dampen that innate eroticism later.
Interesting. And it mentions differences in how boys and girls might learn about it.
Touches on that, yeah.
Yeah.
How culture, peer groups, family might shape those early experiences differently.
He talks about boys learning from dads, friends, their own bodies, and then mentions the civilizing influence of women. What's that about?
It's a bit of an older phrase. The guide seems to use it to suggest women might encourage men towards a more emotionally connected, less purely physical approach to sex.
Okay.
It also brings up something called Ally McBeal syndrome.
Which is?
The idea, maybe a stereotype, that some very successful, assertive women might be less assertive, more inhibited in bed.
Huh. Complex interplay of gender roles and sexuality there.
Definitely food for thought. The guide then defines eroticism, linking it to senses, suggestion, and talks about loosening inhibitions. It mentions alcohol cautiously.
Right.
Eroticism is about sensory experience, especially touch and anticipation. For inhibitions, it suggests a small amount of alcohol might help some people relax.
But heavily cautioned.
Absolutely. Too much impairs judgment, affects performance negatively. The focus is more on consciously creating a safe, relaxed atmosphere where you feel free to explore.
And part of that is the power of suggestion, sensory details, language.
Exactly. Using things like lighting, scents, music, plus evocative words to build that mood, that sexual tension, setting the stage.
Which leads naturally into simple sensual touch. Why the emphasis on slow, unhurried exploration?
Because slowing down heightens sensation, focusing on touch itself without rushing towards an endpoint, deepens connection and pleasure, exploring textures, noticing responses, savoring.
And the basic experience of two bodies together, nakedness.
The guide describes skin-on-skin contact as inherently pleasurable, intimate. There's a vulnerability, a connection in shared nakedness that can strengthen emotional bonds.
So ultimately, what defines great lovemaking, according to this guide?
It really boils down to focusing on your partner's pleasure, making them feel wonderful, using hands, mouth, genitals, whatever works, paying attention to their personality, their desires. Mutual satisfaction is the goal.
That mutuality seems key. Okay, next up, fun and games and sex for explorers. Fun and games mentions things like role-playing.
Yeah, briefly, like a piano lesson scenario or Thai soapsud massage. The idea is just injecting novelty, playfulness, fantasy can boost excitement.
Keep things fresh.
Exactly. Then Sex for Explorers casts a wider net. It even looks at the history of sex aids.
Like medieval maypoles and Renaissance dildos.
Yeah. It shows that using tools for sexual pleasure isn't new. It gives context for modern things like penile sheaths, vibrators for men and women.
And it mentions condoms again?
Briefly, yeah, their evolution, but mainly reinforcing their importance for contraception and health protection.
Right. Then it moves to threesomes, foursomes. What's the main guidance?
Caution and communication. Absolute necessity for mutual consent, clear boundaries, expectations, and, crucially, health safeguards, consistent protection, regular testing for everyone involved.
Non-negotiables there. Okay, from practical exploration to maybe more philosophical, sex is a performance art, and tantric sex. Sex is performance art from Chinese philosophy.
Yeah, the Tao of sex. It views sex not just as pleasure, but as a practice for cultivating energy, well-being.
Yeah.
It mentions concepts like charging the body's sexual batteries, specific techniques like genital massage, patterns called the sets of 9.
And 9 levels of orgasm. How's that different from Western ideas?
The Taoist view, particularly for women, often describes orgasm as potentially multi-stage, a building and unfolding of sensation, rather than just one big peak. It's a different framing.
Interesting. And using mirrors and images.
As a tool, maybe, for increasing visual stimulation, self-awareness, connection to your own body during sex.
Okay, and tantric sex. The core idea seems to be slowing down.
Exactly. It's about deep connection through heightened senses, sustained intimacy. The journey, the exploration is prioritized over just reaching orgasm.
So it involves techniques like men holding back.
That's mentioned, yeah. Along with specific tantric positions designed for closeness, prolonged connection. The number one rule is slow it way down.
And focusing on tension and relaxation, breathing and energy.
Yes. Using mindful breathing, conscious relaxation to amplify the whole sensual and emotional experience, making it more holistic.
Got it. Now, the guide gets into some potentially sensitive areas, extra special interests and sexual dilemmas. How does it handle extra special interests like fetishes?
It approaches them pretty factually. Acknowledges the wide spectrum of human sexuality exists, mentions things like golden showers, hair fetishism, mud wrestling as examples of less common interests.
Judgment-free.
Seems to be the aim, but importantly, it does include a clear caution against anything dangerous or non-consensual.
Safety first. Always. Okay, then sexual dilemmas. What sort of issues does this cover?
It acknowledges that, well, sex isn't always straightforward. Dilemmas can arise.
Like what?
Mismatched desire, intimacy issues, handling strong emotions, maybe dealing with bizarre requests. It covers a range.
Can offer solutions.
It offers some practical rescue remedies, things like making a sex contract and negotiate frequency, or a technique called holder of the keys for managing interruptions, concrete strategies.
Those sound genuinely useful for navigating bumps in the road. All right, nearing the end. 6. Drugs and surgery and future sex. The drugs part looks at aphrodisiacs.
Yeah, the historical search for them, but the book is pretty skeptical about most traditional ones working, beyond maybe a placebo effect.
And the impact of actual drugs.
Yeah.
Alcohol, smoking, narcotics.
Mostly negative is the takeaway. Potential for impotence, lower libido. It also briefly notes some prescribed meds, like certain hormone treatments or diuretics, can sometimes have sexual side effects.
Good to be aware of. Okay, future sex. What does that entail? Sci-fi stuff.
A bit. It speculates about things like sex in zero gravity, how that might feel or work. And it touches on contraceptive tech that was emerging back then. Gels, microcapsules, anti-baby vaccines, even a body temp fertility pendant. A glimpse at how tech might change things.
Really makes you think about what's next. Finally, Troubleshooting and life phases. Troubleshooting covers common problems.
Right. Things like premature ejaculation, impotence. The main message is these are often treatable. Don't hesitate to seek professional help, like at a sex clinic. Reduces the stigma.
Important message.
Yeah.
And life phases for women.
It acknowledges the biological journey, puberty, pregnancy, menopause, and how hormonal shifts impact sexual experience, desire, arousal over time.
Does it offer advice for different stages?
Briefly outlines what to expect, mentions sexual health insurance, the benefit of staying fit. It also reassures that aging doesn't automatically mean bad sex. Many issues are treatable. Adapting matters.
That's a positive note.
Yeah, the overall vibe is that sexual well-being is a lifelong journey. Requires adaptation, communication, and getting help when you need it.
Well, this has been, wow, a really thorough sweep through the KISS Guide to Sex. It covers an incredible amount of ground.
It really does, from the very beginning of attraction right through to, well, future possibilities.
I definitely feel like we've pulled out some core insights. Hopefully our listeners have too, maybe found some useful information, perhaps even a few surprises.
We hope so. It should provide a good foundation if people want to explore specific areas more deeply.
Absolutely. And, thinking about all this, especially the future tech, the evolving understanding, it does make you wonder, doesn't it?
How will our experience and understanding of intimacy continue to change?
Yeah. A really interesting thought to leave things on. Thank you so much for guiding us through this.
My pleasure.
And thank you all for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, take care.